In this last video, we're going to start to build a recursive solution for a guessing game. You'll finish the solution for this in the lab this week. So lab 13, one of the programming challenges in there is to complete this guessing game program. So your goal is to create a guessing game where the user selects a number just in their mind between the number 0 and 100, and then the computer tries to guess the number using a binary search kind of technique. So it'll guess the middle number first, so it always guesses 50 first, and then asks the user, is your actual number higher or lower than 50? So if you say lower, it'll guess the middle value in the range 0 to 49. If you say that your number is higher than 50, then it'll guess the middle value between 50 and 100. It keeps narrowing down the range of values in that way. It sounds a little bit complicated. I think it's easier if you see it live in action. So I have a completed program here. So in your main program, it's going to ask you to choose a number, and then after you do that, it'll say always answer the computer with L if your number is lower, H if your number is higher, or any other key if the computer guessed the number correctly. And then it makes the first call to the guess number function or method using the values 0 and 100 as the range of values that it should create the guess within. Let's run this. So I'm going to think of a number, and let's say I think of the number 3. That's one of my favorite numbers. So I'm thinking of the number 3, and the computer asks me, is it 50? No, it's lower than 50, so I'm going to answer with L. So then it'll ask me the value that's halfway between 0 and 50, so that's 25. So my number 3 is lower than 25. I have to respond with L. And then it'll ask me halfway between 0 and 24, that'll be 12. So it asks me if it's 12. My number's lower, so I'm going to answer lower. Then it asks me the number that's halfway between 0 and 11, that's 6. So I'm going to respond with lower because 3 is lower. And then it asks me, is it 3? So yes, that's it. I'm going to answer yes. And then it'll congratulate itself because it guessed it. The computer will always be able to guess your number as long as you correctly answer the yes, no, the lower, higher values as the computer plays the game. Obviously, if you try to trick the computer and give it invalid information, then it might not be able to guess your number. But as long as you always answer correctly here, it will be able to guess any number that you've selected. So your goal in the lab is to create the implementation for that. Again, you can use the binary search algorithm kind of as a guide because it's a very similar process. Let's think about like what happens. First of all, like what's the base case and what's the recursive case in this solution? Think about like what the user enters as the input in each of those cases. So the base case is when you found the solution, when the computer guesses your number. So the base case is when the user enters something that's not L or H. And then my version of the program, it suggests you answer a Y. You could put in user enters Y if that one was your signal. Either of those would be correct. In this case, you know that the computer guessed it, and you can print out the congratulation message. The recursive case, think about whether there's just one of them or if there's 2 possible things that might happen if the computer hasn't guessed your number yet. If you were thinking there's 2 possible cases, you're right. The computer could have guessed a number that was too low, or you could have guessed a number that was too high. So if the user enters L, that means you need to call the guessing game again. And you want to keep guessing between the current low value and the value of the middle -1. On the other hand, if the user enters high, that means you want to call guessing game with middle +1 and high as the values. You want to look only at the numbers bigger than the current number right now. Now you have to think a little bit more about where you're going to put other information, like where are you going to calculate the middle value and how are you going to get that? Again, you can use the binary search algorithm as an example. You also have to think about where you're going to prompt the user to enter the high, low, or yes value. So all of that's going to be part of the method that you're writing, to do a little bit of thinking to think about how you're going to organize all those things. The main algorithm is right here in the base case and the recursive case. That's how you're going to decide that the computer guessed the number or that it needs to do more work. It needs to consider additional elements in the list. You just need to think about where you're going to add in the statements to calculate the middle value to take the guess, and also where you're going to allow the user to enter their L, H, or Y value.